Hi and welcome back to the channel. Let's get this straight from the start. I'm not going to call them spaghetti westerns because I found out that's a little bit pejorative and dismissive. They're called in Italy westerns Italiana or Italian westerns. I'm going to go with Italian westerns. Though apparently in Taiwan and Japan they call them macaroni westerns, so it is what it is, but I'm going to call them Italian westerns just to make it clear. They were an interesting genre. They lasted mostly in the 1960s and into the 1970s. But after that, the Italians became obsessed with other things like gialli and crime movies and other things like that. And so the Italian Western was one brief moment in the history of Italian cinema, which dates back almost as far as the history of cinema itself. The reason I'm talking about them is I got a box set of 4 kind of slightly obscure Italian westerns from the 1960s and up to 1970, which I'm recommending. I think they're great. I think they're interesting. I think they're the sweet spot for a lot of people who watch this channel. The box set is called Vengeance Trails, and it contains 4 movies: Massacre Time, My Name Is Pecos, Bandidos, and a movie called God Said To Cain. Now the directors on these are pretty good too. You got Lucio Fulci, Maurizio Lucidi, Massimo Dallamano, and Antonio Margheriti. The movies are individual and quirky. They pretty much all use the same template that Akira Kurosawa used in Yojimbo. One man comes into a town and takes out all the bad guys. In this case, they're very much, as the name of the box set suggests, vengeance bound. They've all got relationships of various kinds with the people upon whom they are going to wreak that vengeance, and none of them were anywhere near being filmed in America. So let's start with one of the best ones, which is also the first on the cover, a movie called Massacre Time, which has a really nice pedigree. It was directed by Lucio Fulci, who also gave us Zombie Flesh Eaters. If you haven't seen that film, you're in for a roller coaster ride. And it was written by one of my favourite Italian directors and writers of that era, Fernando Di Leo. I remember back when I talked about The Italian Connection, the movie with Luca Canali and Mario Adolf. He directed that one as well. The thing I didn't know is that apart from making this film, he was a co-screenwriter on A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, which is kind of impressive. So he definitely knew his way around action cinema, and Massacre Time is really interesting. Now, one of the things about Italian westerns that I've got to lay out is Italian westerns were notoriously bad at thinking up names for antagonists and protagonists. In this one, Franco Nero plays a guy called Tom Corbett, who is working in a mine and then finds out that he's being called home to his hometown. He hasn't been there for a very long time. And so he rides home and meets his half-brother Jeff, played by George Hilton, who, in spite of his name, was actually from Uruguay. And he tells him that the family's lost their farm, that a big businessman called Scott now owns it, and that Scott rules the town with an iron fist, along with his son Junior, played by Nino Castelnuovo, who I most remember for being the love interest in The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And this is a very different role for Nino Castelnuovo, because he plays Junior, who's sadistic as hell. He whips Franco Nero with a bullwhip. He shoots people with very, very little reason to do so. And he plays a role kind of like he's channeling Rip Torn with a Sore Neck. Now, Jeff the Drunkard is an interesting character, and George Hilton pretty much steals the movie from Franco Nero. And Franco Nero, of course, we know from so many different things. He was in Camelot playing Lancelot. He was also the guy that the bad guys were trying to get out of America in Die Hard 2. So he had a long career in movies, mostly in Europe, but also in some larger Hollywood films as well. Now, Franco Nero in this one plays pretty straight. He's a kind of the steely-eyed protagonist. Now, all of them are anti-heroes in Italian westerns. You don't get any straight up heroes. You always get kind of ambiguous heroes. So he's there, and his brother Jim, played by the wonderful George Hilton, is a drunkard, as I said. He keeps drinking tequila all through the movie. But he's also an incredibly good shot. He is a really terrific gunslinger. He can think strategically. He has this habit of, when he's about to shoot one or a bunch of guys, he'll sneak up behind them and go, "Hey, gentlemen." And when they turn around, he'll shoot them.
"Hey, gentlemen!"
That's the kind of guy he is. So we get the usual setbacks where Franco Nero's character Tom is whipped and beaten by Junior. He slinks away and kind of conscripts his brother into helping him take on Scott and all the usual 30 or 40 different gunmen who work on his ranch for some reason. All of the people who work on his ranch are gunmen, and they take them all down. Now that's no surprise. This is the kind of movie it is. And of course there is a relationship between Scott and Tom, which is not foreshadowed. The interesting thing about Italian westerns, and I'm digressing I know, is that unlike American ones, you learn the motivation for people doing things at the end of the movie. In American westerns or American action films, you know right up the front why the hero is attacking the bad guys. In John Wick, it was because his dog got killed, of course, and you know that right from the back because you see the dog get killed. In Die Hard, it's because Bruce Willis is trying to rescue Bonnie Bedelia, and we know that right up front as well. But in Italian westerns, they flip that one around, and the vengeance trail is walked almost to the end before you find out the reasons why it happens. And that's kind of interesting. Flipping that makes it really interesting. So, definite recommend for Massacre Time, which, apart from having this really great Italian movie poster cover, the Italian movie posters of the 60s and 70s were the best in the world. They were just beautiful looking artifacts. The kind of least good of the four, and they're all pretty good, but you've got to rank them in some way. The least good is the one directed by Maurizio Lucchini, a movie called My Name Is Pecos, starring Robert Woods, who was an American actor. Robert Woods plays Pecos Martinez, a guy who we see walking across a desert, which is actually a quarry. There was a quarry near Rome where they filmed a lot of these movies. And he meets up with a gunslinger at a little cantina, which has got a well, and he's obviously thirsty. He's just walked across the desert. And we see Pecos take on his first antagonist. Now, the interesting thing about him here is he takes him on strategically. And one of the great things about Italian Western heroes is they're not just the kind of guys who go in and just run through the town and can never get shot. They're not John Wayne. They think strategically in the same way you see Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas doing a gunfight in the OK Corral. Taken on a lot of Kurosawa in that. Of course, Kurosawa was influenced by John Ford. Pecos is trying to get revenge against the guy who killed his family when he was a child. He saw them killed by a gunslinger called Joe Kane, who again has a whole bunch of gunslingers working for him. And Pecos comes into the town where they are. There's also a subplot where there's a whole bunch of money which is hidden by the townspeople in a rum barrel. And Joe Kane comes to town to take the money because one of his people betrayed him, hid it in the rum barrel and gave it to the townspeople just before he died. So Pecos Martinez isn't that interested in the money. In fact, no heroes in any of these movies is particularly interested in the money. They're all about the vengeance. He goes up against Joe Kane in the town. Pecos knows the town because he explored and lived there when he was a kid. So he knows that there's a secret hatch into the saloon cellar through the side of the building, all sorts of things like that. There are all those little strategic bits. And he's kind of the most generic of the heroes in these movies. But it kind of works. It's shot well by Lucchini. It looks good. The antagonist and the hero don't exactly mirror each other because they're very, very different. But that's just purely an action film. My Name Is Pecos works, and it was incredibly popular too because they made a sequel to it as well, which is not something they always did with these kind of movies. And Robert Woods did a few things after that, but never really made a career in cinema. My Name Is Pecos, definitely watch it if you get the box set, but it's not my favourite of the films. Next up, we've got one which is problematic for me because it stars Klaus Kinski. And God Said To Cain, directed by Antonio Margheriti, who is really great. The direction in this is really crisp and sharp, and it uses the limited sets they have available to really good purpose. The movie was shot quite quickly as well. In the movie, Klaus Kinski plays a guy called, and I'm not kidding here, Gary Hamilton, who's an ex-Confederate soldier who is jailed for 10 years for a robbery he didn't commit. It was actually committed by a friend of his, or a one-time friend of his, who is played by Peter Carsten, who people who know this kind of thing remember most for being the guy who has the chainsaw fight with Rod Taylor in the 1968 Jack Cardiff movie Dark of the Sun. But Peter Carsten was actually one of the producers of this film. It was an Italian-German co-production, and Margheriti turns the resources he has, which aren't really great, into a virtue. Gary Hamilton comes into town. He's looking for the guy who stole the gold, and also stole his wife Maria, played really interestingly by a woman called Marcella Michelangeli, who is really beautiful, and also she does some very subtle acting. In fact, the best actor in the movie is her playing Maria. Now, the thing that Margheriti does that is so wonderful is he sets the movie on one night, and towards the end of the day, Gary Hamilton is seen on a hill by all of the gunslingers waiting in town, riding his horse down the hill towards the town, and there's a gust of wind that blows up some dust, and when the dust clears, he's gone, and the horse continues into town. He knows the town quite well, as indeed did Pecos in the other movie I just talked about, and he is there to get Peter Carsten's character and kill him. He's not particularly interested in the gold, but he spent 10 years on a chain gang, and the guy stole his wife, so he's quite pissed off about that. Now, Margheriti sets it on this one night, and there's a dust storm. He says a tornado, but it's not really a tornado. There's a long dust storm blowing into town, and Hamilton uses that as a cover for taking out basically 30 gunmen in the town in one night, and then confronting the bad guy and defeating him in a scene which is slightly reminiscent of the ending of Lady from Shanghai. And there are some really great moments in this one. There's the bell in the church tower in the town which starts ringing late at night for no particular reason, and the guys investigate and find out the reason why it's ringing. The town priest is there playing the organ in the church, and he has a few grace moments there. And they come in and look through the church and can't find Hamilton, but he's hiding in a really interesting place, and then he has a chat with the priest. There's just some really great photography using limited resources, and there's a constant wind as well. The way Margheriti evokes the wind is kind of interesting too. You've got the wind machine, of course. You have to have a wind machine to have wind in a scene. But he also uses a little bit of a smoke machine, but mostly throwing handfuls of hay in front of the camera. So there's constant hay blowing through the scenes, which reminds us of the wind and the fact that the wind can blow up the dust and obscure things. And at various times that works to Hamilton's advantage. It really is a nice little action movie. But, of course, it's got Klaus Kinski in it, which makes it problematic for me, but you may have a different experience of it. And if you like Antonio Margheriti's work, it's definitely a solid Western, though it is said that it's a remake of a Western that was made a couple of years before, with a lot of the same plot beats in it, which is a little bit of a shame. But the box set is still really working well for me at this point. Then we get to the really interesting movie, as far as I'm concerned. Massimo Dallamano's Bandidos, starring Enrico Maria Salerno. And this is the cream of the crop. This is the one that you really want to see. Now, Massimo Dallamano, who was the cinematographer on The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, starts the movie really well with a train robbery, and it's shot like a Leone movie because, of course, he's worked with Leone, and this is his first directorial debut. You can only have one directorial debut, I suppose. And the train robbery is shot really well. We see the guys chasing the train. We see that there's already a guy on the train to kill the train driver so they can stop the train. We see them rob the train, and on the train is a guy who has history with Billy Kane, the leader of the robbers. And this is a guy called Richard Martin, played by Enrique Maria Solero, who is a sharpshooter. He does sharpshooting as a travelling show. And he used to work with Billy Kane as a sharpshooter. And we see Richard Martin get off the train and confront Kane. And Kane shoots his gun holster off his belt before he can draw his gun. Martin is a little bit older, and then Kane ensures that Martin isn't going to come for him in this scene.
Later, I'll get you.
So we've got the Jesus thing happening there, of course, with the symbolism. We cut to a few years in the future, and Martin is working as a travelling show with a sharpshooting act where he's trained young guys to be the sharpshooter in his sharpshooting show. But because he's going through some very rough towns, every now and then the guy who's trained up to be the sharpshooter gets shot by locals. The name he has for whoever he's got doing the sharpshooter, because he's got a big banner with a name on it, is Ricky Shot. So you've got Richard and Ricky, so it gets confusing in there. And then he meets a guy called Philip, played by Terry Jenkins, an English actor, who, according to Kat Ellinger's commentary on this disc, may have been Charles Lawton's last boyfriend. So there's something to think about. Very pretty looking man, Terry Jenkins. He becomes the next Ricky Shot, and he's a good gunslinger in his own right. And so both Richard Martin and the new Ricky Shot go up against Billy Kane and a group of Mexican bandits who helped him, but have had a disagreement with Billy Kane and his gang and have moved back to Mexico and kind of take over a town. And this one is shot incredibly well. It feels a lot like a Leone Western in the best possible way and without imported American actors. It looks great. It was filmed on location in Italy but also in Spain. And so it's got a lot of the Spanish locations that we use for a lot of other European Westerns of the time. It's got a larger scope than a lot of the other movies in the box set. And it works really well. And Enrique Maria Soleno is really, really good as Richard Martin. He just nails it. He gives us a character who can hardly pick up a glass in his hand and is full of anger and bitterness and rage about what's happened to him. It feels a little bit like it might have influenced Peckinpah's Killer Elite, you know, where James Caan's Michael Locken goes up against George Hansen, played by Robert Duvall. I've talked about this before. It's got a lot of the feel of the Killer Elite to it, but in an earlier and very, very different context. And I like that. It's really gets you invested in the main character quickly. The new Ricky Shot we actually see earlier in the film, but we don't know it until the end of the film. And that's kind of interesting too. And there are so many wonderful scenes in this movie, but probably the one that people speak about the most is a panning shot after the train robbery, where they've killed everybody on the train except Richard Martin. And they pan through from the caboose to the engine the whole lot of the people who have been killed by Billy Kane and his gang. And they end on a beautiful grace note. It really is a wonderful scene, shot incredibly well by an incredible cinematographer. And that makes Bandidos the top pick for this 4-movie box set, which I really enjoyed. But there's more, he said, sounding like a television commercial. You also get a booklet with a lot of information and essays about the movies and some nice double-page colour pictures as well. The essays are really good. The quality is superb. You learn a lot more about the movie makers in here as well. And you also get, which is the thing that I love, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep it in the box or actually put it on the wall. You're going to like this. You get a poster. On one side you've got Massacre Time. On the other you've got Bandidos. And they're both those wonderful Italian movie posters of the 1960s. And if I had a wall and I knew exactly where I was going to put it, I would definitely hang this on the wall. It looks fantastic, and at the moment I'm going to keep it with the box set, but that might not last forever. If I can find a wall that isn't covered in shelves full of stuff, I may well hang it up. It really is a lovely poster. And that makes Vengeance Trails, which isn't as expensive as you might think, a box set that you really should buy. Now, this one I paid for myself. I'm not in any way associated with Arrow Films, but I like what Arrow Video does with these things and the quality of the product they put out. The commentaries are all crisp. Each one has a documentary about the film, which is filmed with any surviving actors. There's a choice in each case to have the English version or the Italian version with subtitles, which I recommend, the Italian version with subtitles. But top quality stuff. So that's it this time around. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, if you enjoyed this, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting the notification bell. And let me know which Italian westerns you like and whether you've got this box set and have enjoyed any of them. I can't see a way you wouldn't. But yeah, it really was. It took me down a rabbit hole of Italian westerns, which I've got to pull myself out of, otherwise I won't talk about anything else for the next 6 months. That's the way these kind of rabbit hole genres get you. So, of course, take care of yourselves. If you have to wear a mask where you are, wear it above your nose. Watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some Italian westerns, and I'll catch you next time.
Like the fun of reaching for a gun and going bang, bang.